Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Well, what are we talking about tonight?
Yeah, so we're talking about some growth strategies during this time. Now, quite frankly, whether it's a pandemic time or crisis time is really irrelevant because we all need to be shifting our minds consistently into growth strategies. And so we've kind of laid out 4 different tiers that's kind of the process you go through: prospecting, current customer growth, marketing, branding, social media, and then a partnerships. And so why don't you lead us off with prospecting?
Awesome. Well, I really appreciated, the talk that you and I had in preparation for this. And one of the things I was really encouraged that you said, which I think is foundational, it does happen to link a little bit into last week's limiting lies. But one of the things that you talked about early on in the prep was, some people might be believing the lie that right now it's not possible to grow. Yeah. And so I thought it was really cool that you wanted to help them sort of dismantle that at this time.
Yeah, it's really important. You got to shift that mindset that no matter what time frame, it doesn't matter if there's a pandemic, in our nation or in the globe, that there's an opportunity to grow. Doesn't matter if your business is brand new. Today is day one. There's an opportunity to grow. Doesn't matter if your business has been around for 50 years. There's an opportunity to grow. And so we got to shift our mindset to that first, and then begin taking our steps behind that to allow for growth. But it all starts with just kind of the mindset switch, and a totally different group, but a great reference. There's another talk that I've had before where a lot of times these opportunities are waiting for us to just open the door. A lot of times we don't have to maybe do all the groundbreaking work. A lot of times it just takes for us to just say, I'm willing to open that door. So that's my encouragement to start.
It really is true. It's the grind. And if you don't work on growing now, when it's hard, then you will not benefit from the bottom. Now, you can't pick the bottom. You can't find the bottom. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is you've got to operate as though it were growth mode all the time and find a way in those slow times, in those difficult times. So we are going to talk about prospecting first. The first one that I'd like to talk about is cold calling. Cold calling is by and large free. And the way to cold call, there's a lot of material on this, so we're not going to unpack every little tactic. But in 2 different jobs, actually 3 different, my recent jobs even, I have had to do some cold calling. As a sales leader in my current company, I actually was doing some cold calling and managing last year, in fact, we got one of our deals from a cold call that I did. And so what I would really encourage you guys with is that when I cold call, first of all, be friendly. Make sure that you have a little bit, practice it a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. Have a couple little talking bullet points. I will say that my voicemails tend to be too long. It's just a real fault of mine. So try to do your best with making them short. But your objective on a cold call is actually to get them live if you can. And if you call people, you're going to get a certain percentage of people live. And then now there's your opportunity, and just asking for permission, like, hey, do you mind? This is a cold call. Any way I could have 60 seconds to tell you what I'm about. And if anything resonates, great. If not, then, we can part friends, and just asking for permission. So cold calling is great. It's free. You ask for permission and you'll get meetings and relationships and opportunities from that. And, I know Beast Mode, you've done a bunch of cold calling as well. And some stuff, comes from that. But, it's not always the turnaround isn't always immediate. I mean, sometimes I know in your case, you've had to have a lot of patience to build the business over time.
Yeah, so true. Cold calling is never fun. Doesn't matter who you are. One little quick quote that's in my mind that I would be reprieved if I didn't give you is everybody wants to grow in a gold rush. Not a whole lot of people want to grow in depression, but the people who grow in the depression, I mean, again, it's just a reference point, are the people who make lasting changes. Okay. So the people who are choosing to cold call now, choosing to prospect now in what some people would call a depression or a downturn, those are the people who are making big gains because nobody else is doing it. Whenever the market comes back and everybody's coming back and there's a gold rush, you're going to be a dime a dozen. So if you're going to do it now. That's just my two. Cold calling, again, is very difficult, and everybody has their different ways of going around it. For me, I like to send an email minutes before I call them, because then it's an immediate thing when they say, if you have that person who's a little aggressive and, hey, why are you calling? I'm following up on the email I sent you earlier today. And it's not a lie. I just sent it to you 2 minutes ago, but it's kind of a way to downshift if you need it. Most times you don't need it, but just in case you do, it's just an easy way to say, I'm just following up on that. So
I like that a lot. Yeah. Giving them more context is a really, really good idea. And there's a book I'm reading right now. It's an audio book I'm reading right now called Thinking Fast and Slow. And it talks about how there's a thing called priming. So beast mode, kind of what you're doing there reminds me of what Daniel Kahneman in the book talked about with priming, which is that the first time, that you introduce someone to a certain topic or whatever, is kind of your baseline, but then basically they're primed. So when they hear it again, then it's more familiar to them. So you're kind of a little bit priming them by doing that email first, then they know your name. And also you get the benefit of a self-reference because you send them the email. So it shows some preparation, and it shows you're not just a spammer, but you're really, taking this serious and you have a method and all of that. So I like that a lot. So it's actually a nice segue, Beast Mode, right into cold emailing. I mean, I think for me, the cold emailing is a low yield opportunity, and it's really annoying a lot of times because I get a lot of them in my current job. So I would just say, although I did thank Andrew this week, I posted on LinkedIn how I thanked Andrew, or maybe I posted that last week, sorry. But Andrew actually looked at my profile on LinkedIn, brought in something from my profile, how I talk about leadership and serving your teams or something like that. And he mentioned that and how it meant a lot to him. And then he told me what he was about, right? So context followed by a little bit of information about what he does, and it was short too. I responded that I didn't have any needs, but I really appreciated him. And I think he said, he I don't want to exaggerate, but something like he's going to frame it. I mean, it meant a lot to him that I had, followed up with him. Sales development reps do get a lot of flack. They get people hanging up on them. So it is nice to encourage them from time to time if you can. But Andrew got some kudos from a good cold email where there was context. And so how do you feel about that?
Yeah, if you are going to cold email, I don't do a lot of cold emailing. I just think there's a better way to do it in this day and age of social media, which I'll touch into if you want me to. But yeah, if you deliver a little bit of context, just like that, just, hey, I saw your post and it's tremendous, or I totally couldn't agree more. Yeah, of course, you're touting me up. Of course, I'm going to say something back, or I'm going to be more inclined to reply back, or just be straightforward, just like you were. Hey man, no, you're not good. We're not a good fit for you. I've moved from doing cold emails to doing cold messages on social media that are geared 100% away from business. All I'm looking for is just the introduction of just to further the conversation in any capacity, whether it's just a quick reply in messengers on whatever platforms. And so the way I do that is I speak directly to who they are and what's going on right now. And so I just send a specific message geared to them. So I'll give you an example. So right now, I'll just send a message that says, I just want to let you know that if you need anything during this time, me and my family are here for you and would love to connect with you in any way to help you in your present situation, or if there's somebody who's affected, please let me know. And so, and I mean that 100%. If you know me at heart, I do mean that. But at the same time, if they want to talk business, fantastic. If they want to tell me, which I've had a ton of people just say, hey Beast Mode, I would love for you to just can I just receive some encouragement? Fantastic. I'm here all day. Encourage. And again, this is insight. I'm just giving insight, and being patient, because sometimes they'll come back 4 months, 6 months, whenever their needs have changed, and then they just come back to me and say, hey, I trusted you, and this time you didn't hassle me. You weren't all over me. You just gave me some insight, and you patient. You just sat there, and then 6 months go by, and then they come back and say, hey, we'd like to work with you. And then it's not cold. It's actually past warm. It's actually very hot. So.
Yeah, and if you're going to nurture, if you're going to plant seeds like that with a very long tail, with a very long-term mindset, then you're going to have to be really organized. I know you and I talked a little bit a minute ago about how you're organized and you keep track of touches and stuff like that. So there's a, for any small business owner, or I think most, enterprise selling environments have a CRM system like Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever it may be, or Sugar, or mid-sized businesses sometimes have Zoho, or the other ones that are out there. But yeah, definitely being organized is good. I know you're very organized, but you want to make sure that you keep track of, the people that you're targeting, as well as when you touched them, what message was sent, so you can have an approach of building on itself, instead of losing track of your work, especially when you're using that very relational, slower approach that you're using. You need to have more people that you're touching, so that the seeds that you're planting, more of them can come up at the same time to harvest. But you have to be organized to that. So I would just encourage you, and anybody out there in your prospecting, you got to be organized.
True.
I'll give another example. Some of these have, modified versions in a quarantine type situation. But the world is coming slowly out of quarantine, and we won't always be in this situation. So I'll tell you the ones that I've had experience with before. One of them is lunch and learns. I have done lunches for not a lot of money. I have spent big bucks before for lunch and learns, but I've spent, $125, $200 to get several people in a nice lunch where I give us a short talk on a topic and generate leads from that. I've done a series of them. I've actually taken, we talk about insight a lot on this podcast, but you take some kind of insightful content about a topic that matters to your given target audience. You invite your target audience to the lunch and learn, you pay for their lunch, you develop a relationship, and it's somewhere in between a cold call and beast mode, that social, slower relationship. It's somewhere in the middle, I would say, in terms of the metal or the aggressiveness of it. I've had some luck with that, but it's a very famous way. A lunch and learn approach is a very famous way of selling. That will be back. The business lunch will absolutely be back. And right now, people can certainly, you can certainly offer to do a virtual lunch and learn. And I've done this before, where I'll actually send someone, so, hey, I'd like to buy you a pizza for your office. If I could possibly, have a call with you, do that kind of thing. I one time sent for, I think it was EDS, I can't remember now exactly, but somebody in purchasing was working on a big deal for us. I said, can I buy a pizza for your office? Since you guys are working for us, we'd like to work for you. And they allowed us to do that. I've done that kind of thing before more than once, but it's absolutely a way of maybe spinning that lunch and learn idea to a virtual lunch and learn.
Sure. Yep.
People got to eat.
Yeah, you're very true with that. And then kind of the last one on prospecting that I know I'll introduce, but I know you want to piggyback, is the 15 for 15. So what is that?
Yeah, we've had some luck with this recently. So 15 for 15 is basically something that we've done in my company, where we're saying, listen, if you'd like to hear, a little bit about, we'll educate you on what we do and some of the common issues that we address as a company. If you can dedicate 15 minutes on a call, maybe during your lunch break or something for that, then we'll get you a $15 Amazon e-gift card, which they actually get in their email that same day. It's really quick. But you know what? $15 in the scheme of things for lead generation. I mean, marketing organizations commonly spend $50, $75 or more per lead. So it actually is a very affordable way of getting leads. But we've had some very, some decently famous names actually become leads for us through this process. So whether it be lunch and learns, 15 for 15, or you can do a 10 for 10, for depending on the budget, do a 10-minute talk for a 10-minute gift card thing, right? And you can buy some stuff on Amazon for $10. So yeah, that's prospecting. So I think we're going to dive now into current customer growth. So one thing that I think we want to cover first, Beast Mode, is that first of all, retention of customers is also a form of growth. because it's 70% cheaper to upsell a current customer than to bring on a new logo. It's a way more expensive and slower process actually. So retention is growth. So giving your customers some current attention right now is a really big idea. I know you have taken even small customers and you've given them special attention during this time because you know that retention is growth. And I know you do it from a heart perspective actually, but retention is growth and you're operating that way right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's something that not only that I focus on with JL, but whenever you already have access to somebody's wallet, you just continuing to get them. My example is if somebody's already in your drive-through, you might as well just have them look at the rest of your menu, and so they're already there, they're already buying something. So instead of having them go across the street to get something else, what else can you partner with? And a lot of that times is just asking them, where are your other needs at? I know we focus on this and we do this well, and I'm glad we do it well. What other needs do you have? Can I meet those needs, or can I be a conduit to how you get those needs met? Now you trust me even more. So totally agree.
So true. Yeah, I have had extensive conversations with a friend of mine who's a commercial landscaper in our area. And, I think 80% of his business is commercial, 20%, maybe it's less, is actually consumer. So, they have landscaping, they mow lawns, and edging, they do trees, they do chemicals. I said trees. They do landscape construction. So those nice edifices or fountains, so like the city will pay for, 40 grand for this beautiful edifice or for some new signage, outside with the rock and all that kind of good stuff. So that's kind of their business. And I was working with him and I was saying, how often, what's the ability you have to cross sell? And he said, we have a really good ability to cross sell with other products. And so what he is aware of is, my current customer base, they may just be using me for mowing and for chemicals, but they have trees all over their property that need to be trimmed and that are losing branches and that things are hanging down, or they have a landscape construction project. So if you and me can make sure we service our current customers and just like you just said, check in on other needs, it's a really, really, really good idea. They're already spending with you. They trust you. You're treating retention as growth, and you're cross-selling and upselling. So I think make sure you do service and reach out to your current customers and have a program around that to make sure that you are maximizing their capabilities with you and maximizing your sales.
Yeah, with that example, I would even go a step further. So now that these businesses, those employees that work there, they're homeowners. So now you give them a discount because you work for that business to do the same thing for their home. And so now,
love it.
Recommendation comes from the top. Hey, this is who we used for the entire city. You get a 15% discount if you use them for your home. Now you just increased your reach by probably.
Who knows? Yeah, tons of people. Outstanding. So leveraging your current customers, that's a creative one. Leveraging your current customers is a really, really good way of growing. And it's it's about 70% easier, they say, versus bringing on a new logo. The next one I know is near and dear to your heart, which is marketing, branding, and social media. So how do we, what are some ideas that we can take away in terms of A to Z business growth strategies for marketing, branding, and social?
Yeah, first thing is you have to get content out there, and the volume of content that you have to put out there is pretty astronomical. If you go and look at the numbers, people will think, hey, I'm putting, one post a day. Well, if you actually look at what your reach is with that one post, the times that you should be posting that is almost 15 times a month, they say. The same, just one post. So you can just imagine if you're posting 2, 3, 4 times a day, the recyclability of your content, the volume that you need to have to get people to see it. So you got to be persistent in how you do that. And there's a lot of platforms that help with that. Or again, you got to be really organized in what you're putting out there. But it's one of the ways that you can see the quickest upside that I think right now.
It's good. Yeah, I mean, where else are you going to talk to, 1,000 people or even 500 people all at once with a message? I mean, where else can you do that? So social does seem like a pretty good idea. I did a little.
You gotta be really clear, because you don't that if you think that like an email or a voicemail, you got to be quick and to the point. I mean, in a voicemail, you may have 15, 20 seconds. In a email, maybe you have 5 of somebody's attention, like pure attention. In a social media post, you got as fast as it takes their thumb to lift up and to scroll down to grab their attention. That's all you have. And you got to be real quick to gain that click, not to be silly or anything like that, but that's true.
You're a poet.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I can really vouch for what you're talking about. And, there's organic reach, which is what you're talking about. And then there's paid reach. The organic reach certainly takes a lot of work. And, you talked about, let me talk about my paid reach example in a second. You mentioned a couple of tools. What are some tools that small business owners or larger businesses that might be listening might want to think about in terms of managing their social media?
Yeah, there's a lot of great platforms out there. A lot of them have free trials, Buffers, Hootsuite, just to name a couple of the big ones that are out there that you can put your content in there. You can see what it looks like on different platforms. So you want to be consistent in what your items kind of look like. So even if just in that brief moment, their mind triggers and says, this is where the content's from, if they see it enough. I know both of us like Harvard Business Review, HBR, and their content is very easy to catch, even if you don't, even if you're not looking for it. If you're scrolling quick, a lot of times you can, at least my brain does. I see the Harvard Business Reviews, and I stop and I pause and read the title, and I keep going.
No, actually, it's interesting you said that, but think about the psychology of what you just said. You actually pause on HBR's content. And that's because you have a certain amount of trust and credibility from them. And they've earned that by being one of the best. I think they're the best poster that is on LinkedIn for a kind of like an organization. I would say Gary Vee is one of the better posts for people. But as far as kind of like large organizations, Harvard Business Review is probably the most relevant, and they give away their content. It's crazy. I might consider paying for it if I had to. And so you did pause because you're used to them having good content. So that's actually really good. But that's also a really good point. I think if you're going to use more of an organic strategy, it does have to be value added.
Yeah. You always need to be looking to add something to the other person. And that's just a great life lesson. Let's just be honest with that. When you can just add something to somebody or their business and it doesn't cost them anything, they're 100% apt to give you some attention. They're 100% available to give you whatever time you're asking. And then you come into your strategies, of how can I deliver a specific message? Well, before you deliver a specific message, why don't you give me something before I get there? That's my approach.
It's awesome. Let me go back to something I forgot on current customer growth, and then we'll jump back to marketing, branding, and social. Current customer growth, I actually did learn something the hard way. I think I've talked about this on an earlier podcast, so I'll just go really quick. We tried a lot of different things when I ran a current customer retention and growth group a few years ago. And we tried everything from cookies to, all kinds of things. But just, calling them, checking in, all that. But what actually we learned, something that we learned that was which predicted growth about 40% of the time was when we provided the customer insights about their business. So one of the ways to, whether it be a commercial landscaper or whether it be, anybody, if you can find a way to provide new insights to that customer about their business, that actually, from my experience, did lead to closed deals, not just buddy. I've tried Buddy Buddy, and it wasn't an utter failure, but it was very mildly um, helpful. But Insights was super, like over 40%. I wish I could remember the numbers exactly. I have the study somewhere, but over 40% of closed deals from going through an insight exercise for the customer about their business. So
That's
FYI on
free.
that. Mm-hmm.
That's
And it
free.
was free. It was free. A lot of
Yeah.
time, but free.
Yeah. Take it or leave it. They're going
Mm-hmm.
to take it. And then I do that a lot, and I do it intentionally without a sales approach. I give you the insight, and then literally I'm probably the one hanging the phone up, or I'm the one closing out the email and forcing that individual to recognize what that was and then get back to me. They're coming back with now their motive of, I want to continue this conversation. And again, like you said, leads to closed deals. So
It's great. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to, we're talking about marketing, back to that marketing, branding, and social media. We talked a little bit about posting frequency for organic search. We talked about Hootsuite and other tools. What was the other one you mentioned?
Buffer.
I think there's also one, IFT.
IFT.
Say it again.
IFTTT.
Okay.
If this, then that.
Okay. A couple paid products that I want to talk about really quick are intent data. So there's some vendors out there like Bombora that, and actually, let's see, Bombora, Tech, there's a tech one called Tech Target, actually. But anyway, there's what's called intent data. Actually, G2 Crowd has it as well. But intent data basically says these people are searching the web. They've agreed to cookies on their browser. And so people basically track them and say, hey, they're clicking around and they're looking for, kitchen equipment or whatever it is. And so you sign up for that intent data and you get leads on those people, or you get leads, at least maybe they don't track the exact person, they might just track the company, but you at least know to cold call, XYZ Supply because they're looking at, large refrigeration units, which is one of the things that you sell, kind of thing. So intent data is a really good thing that you can buy. The pricing can vary. I don't have that type of thing available for you off the top of my head, but intent data is something that you can look at as a business. And then the next one is sales databases. So my company uses a product called Zoom Info. There's something out there called Lead IQ, Discover Org Bot, Zoom Info. So that's really the same product now. But there's lead sources where you actually get the name, the email, the phone number of people, and that will of course enable your cold calling, your emailing, and your outbound activities. So to give you a database, instead of just literally going to LinkedIn, you don't have an email, you're trying to figure out the email address, you don't have a phone number, these provide you, it shortcuts your prospecting activity and it raises your chances a lot. But there's a bit of an investment there for sure. They're not real cheap, but those are kind of like a must-have to do a lot of that marketing and kind of prospecting as well.
Yeah, and you in that same breath, real quick.
Yeah, it's good.
While you need to do, while it's helpful to do those, you don't want to forget the organic growth at the same time, or the organic process, because while you can pay for those, and while it does speed up the process, the individual you're reaching out to knows they didn't give you that information. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times you're met with a little bit of, I wouldn't say hostility, but they're a little guarded because I didn't give you this information, but yet here you are. But if I am able to reach you organically, now that door is a little bit wider for you to walk through. So you should be doing both at the same time. You can't do one without the other.
Yep, it's good. So as far as marketing, branding, and social, we're seeing a lot of Zoom activity now, Beast Mode, with things like webinars and podcasts and things of that nature. What do you have to say about building an audience, building your brand, and generating leads through webinars and Zoom and stuff like that?
Remain consistent, just because, again, the volume of individuals is growing in that sector. So that area is the gold mine. And so that's kind of the counter to the example that I gave earlier, that everybody wants to prospect during a gold mine. And while cold calling may be down, well, Zoom and webinars are up. So everybody's doing it. So You got to remain consistent, and you got to be targeted on what you're doing. Again, with as many Zooms, invites, and webinars and podcasts that are available, you need to be clearly defined on what yours is. If I'm going to spend 30 minutes, I need to know what I'm getting into.
So true. Yep, you better lead with some insight there to stand out from that crowd for sure. And this is an area that's near and dear to your heart. Trade shows maybe, but event sponsorships definitely. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, event sponsorships is a great way that you can kind of tie in, and you can dig a little deeper into a client or into their reach, because a lot of times you can piggyback off of who somebody already has a connection with through an event sponsorship or hosting a webinar, things like that. You can sponsor those. There's people who are going to come to somebody else's content and that are not coming for yours. And so if you can snag a few there, it's a great way. Now, the person putting that on needs to be giving insight. So a lot of times, if you're going to do that, you need to know who you're sponsoring, and you need to know what they're giving is worthwhile. And again, pretty much in that aspect, everything you're giving away is for free, just because those people aren't there for you. So for them to take whatever you have, it's got to be 100% insight, 100% for them, and just let it matriculate to you.
You've had some luck with sporting events, and you've told me the ROI is pretty great for those types of event sponsorships, which was new to me. I didn't realize that sporting events would generate leads like that.
Yeah, especially whenever you can piggyback together the return for the individual. The return for the individual is they're already at a place or they feel comfortable where they are. And so if you can just continue to add value to where they already are, they're just going to, it's a why not to receive your information and then come back to you. And so it's a great methodology. And it's not just for sporting events, although it's just where it seems to be utilized a lot right now.
So good. Well, I know we're wrapping up here, but we didn't really have time to talk about partnerships. All I would say for that is that look for organizations that have natural synergies, and try to reach out to them and offer lead sharing opportunities. Just have a discussion with them about what lead sharing or what co-marketing might look like. Think about partnerships. So yeah, definitely enjoyed chatting with you on this podcast, and appreciate you connecting.
Yeah, for sure, Howie. Again, this is something that I know that we're going to continue to do, and we're going to continue to love on those around us. Continue to follow us and like, share, comment on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, LinkedIn, and Facebook.